Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hilltop Pillbox here in Abbotsford, British Columbia, Canada. And we are going old school today. Not as old as we could go. The 1981 version has cardboard chits, but this is the original board. And this actual board, this actual box, this actual board, and all the pieces I got in 1989. Was in my mall. There was a Dufferin Games Room store, and I purchased this Fortress America and Shogun, all within a couple of paychecks. And I mean, the sad part is I didn't really have anybody to play with, but hey, I kind of lived a little isolated at the time. I was at my parents' place, but yeah, I just didn't have anyone to play with, so I hauled out the game and just started rolling dice. And boy, what a lot of great memories. And there's something about these styrofoam things. I know these have gone the way of the dodo, but there's something about them I really enjoy. There's also this neat bit of paper. I think this came with a later version. I actually had 4 versions of this original game, and this here got sent out in 91. I was able to pick this up, and it just talks about things. And one of the first things is that people are complaining that the Allies win all the games, and so they're trying to give you some ideas of what to do and how to right the ship, as it were, and how to do weapons development. Well, what I've done, and this is completely pretty much out of my own head, so the playtesting on it has been minimal. But what I like to do with this original game is, first of all, I like to have double the units on the board and double the economy. So we start out with double of the units for everybody. Just double it up. And then everybody's making twice as much money. So there's a lot more fuss and bother going on, a lot more fighting going on. I don't know if that really slants the game one way or the other. But, you know, it is what it is, and it's just something to try, right? But the other thing I do is, I've got this technology. And very simply, you've got these multi-stage technologies, and you, each round, you can choose one, and they're specific to the nations. Now, there's some that they all have advanced infantry, except for the Americans. They have Marines, but there are some crossovers, but there are some special ones as well. And essentially, at the beginning of the turn, you just move your token, your roundel, over one spot each for free. You just move it automatically. But you can, at the beginning, as number 2 says, spend 20 IPC, and it's an attempt to move the same technology a second space. But you got to roll a die, and you need a 6. And of course you lose the 20. So a long shot, but if you're desperate, you can do that. And so some of the things we have here that are specific: we have conscription, we have commissars and dug-in defense for the Soviets. The Germans get nuclear weapons, which is tough for them to get, but they get it. And it's actually specific to them as heavy armor. Nobody else has that, but it's pretty simple. The attack goes from a 3 to a 4. For the United Kingdom, they have shipyards and paratroops, and the sun never sets. And for Japan, they have shipyards as well, and they have long-range aircraft. And then for the Americans, they have Marines, advanced production, heavy carriers, and nuclear weapons. So here's what each of those things can do. So for the advanced production, you can get essentially $8 worth of free stuff each turn, which in a regular game would be $4 worth of free stuff each turn, because this is double economy. So it's not really hugely tilting, but hey, a little extra might help you out. So you can get an infantry and an armor or a transport for free, and you just put it in the capital or in the sea zone. Commissars. On the first round of combat, a single friendly infantry may be eliminated in order to promote up to 2 other infantry to an attack of 3. So you're killing your own guys. So I figured that was fairly fitting, if the stories are to be believed. Conscription, the first 2 Soviet infantry cost 1 IPC each. All right, and that's a lot of fun. Dug-in defense is for the Soviets. Once per turn, a single home territory may be marked as dug in, and up to 4 units of any type are given a +1 boost to the defense stat. Okay, so he starts at the beginning of your turn and goes around to the beginning of your next turn. So, can be handy. Heavy carriers. Carriers can carry 3 fighters and defend at a 4 instead of a 3. Long-range aircraft. All air units are +2 to their movement stats. Marines, all infantry are +1 during the first round of amphibious combat. You've seen stuff like that before. And then we get the nukes. And essentially, you do not automatically get to move your nuclear one up for the Germans or the Americans. You have to roll, and you're spending $5 per die. 5 or a 6 is a success, and it cannot be moved up 2 spaces. Okay? Once successfully completed, you place the nuke. You can use whatever you want for that in the nation's capital. It can only be moved with a bomber. I know they transported the nuke with the cruiser, the Indianapolis, but just hang with me on this one. It may be transported to another territory and landed safely, or safely landed. When you use it as an offensive weapon, it may only be delivered with a bomber, following the standard combat, non-combat rules. Okay, and you can't attack that same territory with any of your ground forces. Of course, you wouldn't. All right, so you can't go in, nuke it, and then bring in tanks. Roll a d12. That number +3, and that's d12 is important. +3 is applied to both the economy of the target nation, so they lose that much money, and the units in that territory. Casualties are chosen by the defender and are immediate, and no return fire. The player with the nuclear weapons technology may build up to 1 nuclear bomb each turn at a cost of 30 IPCs. Okay, so 15 in a real game. So, not terribly difficult, but yeah. Paratroops. Up to 2 infantry in 1 territory may be transported for an attack on any single territory within 3 spaces. Use normal attack values, and you can't use it on capitals. That's always cheesy. The shipyards. So we got this cost, and this I thought is kind of interesting. So your first one is cheaper, absolutely, because the normal stats are 8, 18, and 24. But then the second and the second are the same for the sub and transport, but then everything gets very cheap. So if you build, 5 subs, your 5th one only costs 3, your 6th one costs 3, your 7th one costs 3. So you can really finagle a good deal on ships if you're Japan. That can really help you out, or the United Kingdom also has shipyards. And then the sun never sets for the UK. Once per turn, up to 3 newly purchased infantry may be placed in any original UK territories under Allied control, must be placed separately. Okay, so essentially, if you notice that the Germans might be breaking through here in Africa, you can place 1, 2, 3 and just kind of slow down the tanks a little bit. But again, these are things that the earliest you could have it would be after turn 1, after turn 2, and then on turn 3. So for the first 2 rounds, there's no technology coming on and wrecking the board. All right, so that's it. So we're going to set this up. We're going to have double units and double cash, and we will see what we see. And it should be a very interesting game, and I don't really have any tactical points. I suspect I'll do the regular attack into Eastern Europe with Karelia, but there's a lot of infantry going in, and there's going to be double the amount of stuff in there, so we'll see if that infantry can actually pull something off. All right, wish me luck, and we'll let you know what goes on at the end of round 1. All right, just before I get rolling dice here, this is what it looks like after it is completely set up, and there's double of everything. The only thing I didn't double, there's 2 things I didn't double. That would be anti-aircraft guns and industrial complexes. But everything else, there's 2 of everything that was on the setup charts. So lots and lots of stuff out there, and yeah, I suspect there's going to be a lot of, a lot of death and dismemberment here on round 1. But we'll see how it goes. And, in case you're wondering, I didn't actually put the industrial complexes out for anybody. I know where they are. just because there's just not a lot of room. You can see Germany is quite packed, UK's packed. I guess, I could probably sit them out somehow, but I just wanted to keep it as uncluttered as possible to begin. Of course, if I do build one, then that will go on. So, all right, round one coming up. Here come the Russians. Okay, round one is in the books, and we'll show you what we can see. Forgot to move these guys back. As you can see, in the Soviet Far East, the Japanese did an amphibious assault, and were successful there. And in the Pacific, huge battle out in Hawaii. The Japanese sank, there's a couple carriers there, and they sank them. And then the Americans brought over their bomber from the eastern U.S., bombers. And the fighters and everybody came and hit them. And so the Americans have the only fleet in the Pacific right now. But the Japanese do have a lot of bombers. So that could be a problem. But America does have 3 battleships in the region. Over here, India fell to the Japanese, as did China. And it's weird playing these games again, because there's no more Himalaya. And everybody can attack everybody. So on the American turn, I half thought of attacking into India here, but thought they'll do better in defense. So I'll just leave them there. Don't know how long they'll defend with all this air power around. Over here, the Soviets were able to take Eastern Europe and Ukraine, but the Germans were able to punch back, took Karelia, and took back Eastern Europe, but failed to take Ukraine. They did a landing with a couple of transports, 2 tanks, 2 men, and they failed to dislodge the 4, actually it was just 3 Russian tanks in Ukraine. There's only 2 remaining. And so that was a little disconcerting to the German war effort. The Germans also did take Anglo-Egypt Sudan, but were unable to hold it from the British counterattack, which included some troops from India and Syria, Iraq, and the fighters coming in from India. So the British have pretty much abandoned anything in the Pacific theater. They did build a industrial complex down here, and are getting ready to do something. Not exactly sure, but I figured I'm losing India, and Anglo-Egyptian Sudan had fallen. So, but this turn can likely go again here with a factory if I want to, be able to help the Soviets a little bit more easily, because the Germans are all out of the Med. Only 1 British sub remains. Brought the Americans down here. Not really sure why I did that. Just something to do, I suppose. I did have an idea of bringing them over to Africa, but then I realized there's nothing that they can do. But they can hit France from here, which is kind of cool. But that is it, because the British home fleet, everything has been destroyed by the Germans, and they had some transports over here in this sea zone. They were wiped out by the German bomber. So, with all that punching power all around the board, lots of stuff died. I was going to keep a dead pool, but I forgot to do that, but a lot of stuff died. It's cleaned up quite a bit, especially with naval forces. Not much naval forces left for anybody. The Soviets built a bunch of infantry and actually built a fighter as well, and a couple of tanks with all that money. And this is what we look like here at the end of the round. So the Soviets are down a couple, and the Brits are down some. Germany's at par. The Japanese are way up. They're 7 up, and the Americans are down 2. And for technology, the Soviets went with Commissars, Germans with the heavy armor, the UK with the sun never sets, long-range aircraft for the Japanese, and advanced production for the Americans. Get some free units there. Might be a fun thing to do. And with the double money, we don't have limits on production in the home country, in the home territory, and they can build double the amount of units in other territories. So the Japanese built a factory here. They can put 6 units on there. The British can build 4 units here in the Union of South Africa. All right, we're going to head on to round 2 here. Stay tuned, and we'll see. The Germans did build a lot of stuff here, but the Soviets, they've got a lot of cannon fodder. Take back Karelia likely, but you cannot ignore the Japanese. Not in this version. Round 2 coming up. Okay, here we are. Round 3 coming up, and again, just sweeping destruction. So the the 2 battleships here were sunk. I sent 4 Japanese bombers over and only 1 survived. So 3 bombers for 2 battleships. Pretty close money-wise. 45 to 48. So I guess fairly good trade for Japan, but America, of course, is going to continue to build up their navy, which will force the Japanese to do the same. So the Japanese actually built a battleship and a couple of subs this turn. And remember, in this game, planes can fly over and snipe subs. So subs are not as valuable in this game as they are in other games. Everybody gets a free shot at them, and then they can decide to take off and submerge. So, but the Japanese are going to continue their inexorable march westward here, and the Russians have a decision to make as to whether or not they're going to do something about that. Now, the Japanese have coagulated most of their fighters here in India. They're ready to do some things. Americans came to land here. I remembered why I brought them down here last turn, is because there was a couple of German subs up here that had they stayed here, they would have been sniped. So that's why I moved them. Sometimes you forget why you do things, but in the moment it's a good idea. Built 4 British tanks down here and built a factory in Australia. And we'll have to keep an eye on that because, of course, the Japanese do have a couple of transports, but maybe we can keep them at arm's length. Up here, the Russians and the Germans traded Karelia once again, but the Germans have a bit more stuff in Karelia than they had last time. I still think it's doable for the Russians to attack. We do have a decent little stack here, but that's not nothing there, and some decent kickback here with the Germans, and again, their air power remains. I was thinking of taking a shot at their air power with my British bombers, because it's 4s on 4s, but the cost, of course, would be greater for the British. And if the dice go cold on one round, you might just be throwing away Bomber Command. Never a good thing. But the Germans do have 6 tanks down here that can reach Karelia, another 4 there, 6, 4, so it's 20 tanks they have, and lots of humans to absorb the hits from the venerable Soviet Defense Force. This is where we are here. You may have actually noticed that I didn't do the economy right on the first round, but we have sorted things now. And there we are. The Soviets, as they typically do in this game, are just a little bit shy of where they used to be, and the Japanese and the Germans are starting to gobble up some of that Soviet economy. Japanese are having a pretty good game of it right now. But again, they don't have a lot of ground forces over here. So they're not, I think the Soviets might have to sortie their tanks and come down here and smash some of these Japanese units. So we'll see what we do about that. There are some Japanese tanks on the mainland here. There's about 6 of them total. So they do have to be cognizant of that. Over here, everybody just continued on with what they were doing. I saw no reason to change things up. And hopefully, I think this turn I might even pay the 20 IPCs for a couple of them to see if we can't move it forward. It's a 1 in 3. Oh, it's a 1 in 6. So, your 17% chance of actually getting a second advancement. But imagine if you did start winning the technology race. And 20 IPCs is a lot of money in a base game, but it's only really 10. So it's something a couple of these nations could afford this turn. So Japan might actually take a swing at that and see how that goes. All right, on to round 3. And the German juggernaut continues to move eastwards. Let's see if the Soviets can stop them. Well, very exciting round 3 to be sure. Let's take a look at the Pacific, and the Japanese are continuing to build up their fleet. The Americans put some new boats in because their old boats are down here taking the Solomon Islands. And remember the good old days of the original Axis and Allies where your bombards are immediate, no return fire? Well, the battleships got a couple of hits, so that really helped them take care of the 2 Japanese infantry on the Solomons. The British built a factory in Australia, but I think they did that. Did they do that this round? Maybe. Yeah, I think it was this round. So, yeah. No, it was last round. They didn't build anything there this turn. The Japanese built a factory in India and actually did an attack on Persia with a couple of infantry and all their aircraft, and were able to kill 2 British infantry and 2 Russian infantry, but they got 2 hits back on them, so they decided to retreat in good order. And over here, the Japanese went into Xinjiang and Novosibirsk and Evenki, and were able to take all of them without too much distress. Americans have slowly made their way into the Indian Ocean here, and are now threatening a landing, possibly, in the mysterious subcontinent of India. Oh my. Yeah, that'll be a fun attack. Obviously, you can't win that, but yeah, we'll see if they even do it. Because the Japanese do have a bomber they could bring over here to go after these transports, but by then the British may have actually brought in the sub and maybe even a couple more transports just to beef it up and make that a very unattractive option. Over here, you can see the Soviets really are getting squeezed now. They're down to $13, so that's $26 that they get. So I think their days of trying to rescue India and all that is over. Heading into China, that's all gone now. They are going to be circling the wagons, as it were. Do have a goodly number of things in there, and 5 fighters, of course, but not much to be done now. If they go out, that'll be it for them, I do believe. So they're going to have to stay at home and wait for the British to come and rescue them. And the British have built a fleet. They saved a lot of their money from the last round, and so they are now going to be able to put some transports down just in the nick of time to start putting some pressure onto the Germans. Might be too little too late, though. We shall see. Not much else going on in the Atlantic. So, yeah, the line has been drawn now, and Moscow is right there, ready to be attacked from the west and the east. Likely no attack this turn, though, although they can get quite a number of tanks there. The Russians will be putting down a number of men, so Germany will probably wait one more round. But you never know. Sometimes I change my mind here and just go for it. All right. And again, with the technology, everybody continues on in status quo. So I did not try to roll a die. I looked at it and I went, oh, $20. I could really use that in units right now. So no joy on that. Maybe this turn, but I don't know. Only the Japanese have a really healthy economy, as you can see. And there you have it. They're up in the 40s, so they're getting $84 they just collected this round. So they are rolling. Okay, here we go. The sun is getting lower in the sky here, but you can see the ray of sunshine over the Japanese rising sun roundels. I'm sure that's somewhat poetic. Time will tell. Turn 5, and I'm having a really good time with this game. It's just really taken me back to my, well, I'd say my childhood, but I was in my late teens. But it sure is fun. Sure is fun. So building a little bit of stuff here for the Americans. They brought down their last build down to here because their other build, yes, now that would be a victory city in most of these games, but victory cities are simply the 5 capitals. And the Americans went and scooped $3 there. And in range of the 1 bomber, but not all the fighters. So they're safe for now, and going to try to snipe some more islands. The Japanese, though, consolidated here in India, and brought some more guys over to put some pressure on Moscow from the east. Americans came up from Central Africa here and landed in Persia, killed a couple Japanese tanks without much fuss. That was pretty handy. British are coming down here trying to sneak the transport across. And yes, it's in range of the bomber here, but it had other more important things to do last round, so he has survived. Not exactly sure what I'm going to do with him, but just coming on over to Australia and maybe start to build down there. I'm thinking this might not have been a great build because the Americans seem to be doing most of the heavy lifting here. But it is what it is. Trying to give myself some options here. Up here, the Germans just kind of moved everybody in. So they're sitting here, and they have 16 tanks and about the same number of men, a few more, I think maybe 18, 19 men. And the Russians, pardon me, can withstand that attack, but it would be costly. And again, right now they're only making whatever they got here 8 times 2, so $16, and they made 20. What did they have last turn? I forget. Not much though. Didn't have much, so they're not making a ton of money right now. They are really up against it. The British fleet got sunk by the German. The Luftwaffe came up here and wiped them out, but not without loss. They lost 5 fighters doing it. So they're down to 1 fighter and 2 bombers for air power, and I have been spending more on ground units, knowing that I'd have to counter the Russian ground units. So I don't have much to go after this new British fleet that just suddenly appeared. So I think that fight might be over right now, and we will try to concentrate on getting a steady line of the Krauts heading east. Hopefully that will work for them. But the Allies, I think, have now decided to, start punching back here. Soviets have had to turtle; they can't punch anymore. But I think they did a good job stalling and keeping the Germans anyway from getting out of hand. So the German economy right now is nothing to really write home about. They are up 6 over here, but down 2 here. So they're up 4. They're at 36 right now. So they are, they are actually $1 better than America, but that's pretty typical for this game. If America starts making money in Europe, because that's typically where they'd make it, if not here in the Pacific, that means they're doing well. So they usually stick between 32 and 38 most of the game, and when they start punching above that, that's usually means that the Axis are hurting for certain. So just got to build some transports for the British over here. Got to get some more tanks rolling eastward for the Germans. Soviets, well, they're just gonna build men, and the Japanese, as you can see here, built 2 stacks of 6 tanks. That's the lion's share of their money, but they did have actually $88 to spend this last turn, so they were able to put in a bunch of guys here, $84, so they put in 8 infantry. So they do have a very healthy economy. They're sitting at 39 right now, but they collected more than that last round, and again, double that, so they're up in the 80s again, and should be able to deal with what the Americans are doing here. But time will tell if they can defend and go after Moscow at the same time. Unlikely, but we'll see. Turn 5 coming up. Okay, so here we are, round 6 about to begin. And if you can hear drumming in the background, that's my son. He is just become the drummer, and has been for a little while, I suppose, of a really good AC/DC cover band called Power Up. And so he's going to be doing some shows with them. So he's just getting the rust off a little bit here. Hasn't played for a little bit, but he's quite good. So that's him practicing in the background, if you can hear it. All right, so the Americans continue to pour money into the Pacific and letting Germany go simply against the UK and Russia at this time, because if not, Japan would likely be in Moscow by this point, but they've had to try to build some things to stave off the American invasion. As you can see, they are all over the place now, have been able to scoop up all these islands without taking any hits, thanks to battleship bombards and some good dice. A couple of bombers sitting in Manila and the Philippines, and likely going to do some raids here on these complexes very shortly. Of course, that is without any fear, unless there's an anti-aircraft gun there, so I might have to remember to build those with Japan on their turn. But the Japanese, again, building more tanks, and they did kick out the Americans and some British out of Persia. Now, you might be wondering, how did these British get here? Well, I'm going to tell you. The British actually did pay the extra money, and they got there the sun never sets. So now they can place up to 3 infantry anywhere in the world that is a original British territory. So I was able to place one here because the Americans were there, and then I placed one there and one there. So at least there's something in the way. So I think that was a good one for the Brits to go after. I was debating that and shipyards, but that just, I thought this was probably a better way to go. Yeah, this is probably going to happen this turn. The Germans now have, what is that, 26 tanks and a lot more infantry. And the Russians have about 45 units in there. So many of them are fighters, which is good. But they're really outnumbered by the Germans, and the Germans have got a lot of infantry to absorb hits. So the Russians collected 20 this last turn, so they'll be able to place 6 infantry. The British do have some fighters. They might fly over to help out, but I think this is going to be a very telling round. But the British bombers in Moscow were not absent of work. They came over here with the fighters. 1 bomber and 2 fighters came into the Caucasus. It was kind of a, let's just take these guys out raid, so that the Russian tank can zip through and collect some money. If they survive this round, they'll be able to put a couple more guys on. And they bombed the German factory. The 4 bombers came in with 4 dice and got $10. So not great, but better than nothing. And the British now have 3 transports and are now going to be able to force a landing. So Germany has to keep that in mind with whatever they build here. They've got to make sure that they build something that can repel the British. Beyond that, like you see, nothing else for the Americans there, and the Brits did really nothing down there. They have moved a couple of transports this way, and this transport's kind of out of position, can't do much this turn, but these guys here could actually land up in India or come and take Borneo Celebes, but they don't have any air power or battleship support, so that'd be a tall order, but we'll see what we can get them to be doing to support the Americans here in the Pacific struggle. All right, on to turn 6, or round 6, pardon me. And at the end of this round, or at the start of their turns, the Russians should have commissars, but that's more of an offensive thing. So I'm not sure that was the right one to do, the way the game has gone. Might have to do the dug-in defense. Might want to do that next time. I don't know if we're going to hold out that many rounds, but we might. The Germans should have heavy armor, so all their tanks are going to be attacking at 4, so that could be rather telling. And the Japanese long-range aircraft, it should be there because everybody goes up 1 regardless. And the Americans should be getting some freebie stuff at the end of next round. So here we go, round 6. Does Moscow fall? And if it does, will that be the game? Or is there enough stuff going on here to keep the Axis working hard? And as we know in this game, the idea is for the Axis to capture 2 of the Allied capitals. And that is a tall order. But We shall see what we see. Round 6 coming up. Turn 7 coming up, and we'll show you what's going on here in the Pacific. As you can see, the US of A is putting a lot of money into building real annoyance for the Japanese. And as you can see here, the South Pacific, they've taken all the islands, and sure looks empty, doesn't it? Nothing there. That ain't exactly true, because over here there's a nice little fleet in Borneo Celebes, and they have 3 battleships, a couple of subs, carrier with 1 fighter, 5 transports, and 10 units. So, you know, the 3 bombards, that ain't nothing. So the Japanese will have to do something to take care of that on the next round. You can see that they do have a couple battleships already, and will likely be able to spam a bunch of subs or something this turn. Heading over here, the Japanese were able to force themselves into Syria, Iraq, took that, and the British are likely not able to hold Africa for much longer. But it looks like this might be getting close to the end of things, because the Germans were able to take Russia and have 8 tanks remaining, and there is not a Russian unit on the board. That's just it. They lost their sub in that first round versus the German air power and their subs. So that's it. They're done. And they had $30 they collected. And in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have taken the tank out of there, blitzed it through, but it wouldn't have made a difference with that many tanks left over. The real problem was the fighters. There were 7 fighters in Russia, and they just did not shoot well. The most I got in one round was 4, and I usually got 2 or 3, and they just did not pull their weight, so that didn't help. If they had gotten 7 a couple of times, well, they may have won. Now, the Japanese, since they didn't have to take Moscow, they're heading this way, but all these tanks could have been heading north, so there really wasn't an awful lot extra to be done. And I didn't move these Japanese infantry, mainly because I forgot, but they're only 2 steps from the coast. It's very different from so many of these other Axis allies and HBG games where you've got quite a walk from Russia to the coast, but here they can make it in just a couple of turns. Over here, the Germans built a stack of men, and yeah, so they built 19 men in Germany proper, and that's just too much for the British to overcome. They do have 6 transports now, though, and they did take England, Norway, just to be British. But it's more of a commando raid than it is an actual landing, and the Germans should sweep them aside. Not much going on here. The American transports have made their full lap of Africa. They've gone all the way around and are headed home. But I think this turn the Germans might take him out. I think things are well in hand for the Axis right now. The Pacific is interesting, though, so I'm going to play one more round, see what can happen. I don't think the Americans are going to be able to do much against what the Japanese can bring now, but we'll play one more round, maybe try to force some sort of a naval conflagration if we can. All right, so round 7 coming up, and it's been a good game, been interesting, and now everyone here has their their bonuses, their technological bonuses. Commissars for the Soviets never really got to see the light of day, unfortunately. Japanese with the long-range aircraft, very handy right now. And then the advanced production with the Americans last turn, they got to place a free man and tank, so that helped get their transports full. Saves them a little bit of money. And the British have shipyards begun, but this is likely going to be the last round unless there's a clean sweep for the Allies somehow. But as you can see, the entire mainland is now under Axis control. There's nothing that is held by the Allies, and it looks like Africa could be under some duress shortly. All right, well, we shall carry on, though, one more round, and we'll update you and see if there's more to be done or if that's it. Stay tuned. All right, headed round 8, and we are going to call it. Despite some nice maneuvering by the Allies this turn, it's just a money thing. And we'll show you what's going on at this time. So the Americans moved everything up to Alaska, not worried about the Japanese fleet because, hey, some battleships and some bombers went in there and did their shtick, and look at that, we're able to clean them out. And the transports came over here and landed right between two stacks of Japanese things. After the British came in and landed, it was empty. Then the British lost their transports to the Japanese fighters, and there you have it. So there's a damaged battleship left here in the sea zone, and some other stuff ready to come across, but just simply not enough. Just not enough. All this stuff is up in Alaska, so it looks pretty impressive, but the Japanese are definitely able to build up enough stuff to... you see, I didn't even put on an American build. It's math at this point, so really kind of a... I won't say a waste of time, because it is always fun playing, but the writing is definitely on the wall. And the Germans were able to kick out the lone British, and there you have it. So the British built up some stuff to defend the fleet because the Germans built 10 subs. And yeah, it's just where things are going. And in a few more turns, and maybe even less turns, they'll have super subs. And that will definitely spell the death of anything, because really just keep cranking out subs, because they've got enough ground forces to stymie British landings, and just keep building up subs and subs and subs. So the next time, you'd probably take these 10 and with the aircraft and attack this fleet and likely kill it, and then put down another 10 subs. So there you have it, folks. That's it. So the double money seems to work pretty well for the Axis on this particular iteration. I think I probably spent too much time up here as the Brits trying to create a problem for the Germans. I think I probably should have been pumping out 4 tanks a turn out of South Africa. And I never should have built this factory over here. I just thought maybe I can go hand in hand with the Americans, but then I kept coming back here trying to save the Soviets, and as we can see, that did not work out too well. But thanks so much for watching, folks. I really appreciate your support of the channel, and don't forget, as we always say here on the Hilltop Pillbox, make sure you hug your loved ones, and thank your friends for playing, and hey, may those dice be with you.